And like we just said, we're nearing the end of testimony in Derek Chauvin's trial. Now we're seeing questions online about the other officers involved in that scene and whether they will face charges. Gabe Cohen lays it out.
As the world watches Derek Chauvin's trial, we're seeing tweets about the other officers who were at the scene when George Floyd died. One says, if Derek Chauvin is found guilty, shouldn't the other officers involved be brought to trial as well? So let's verify. Are other officers facing charges for George Floyd's death? Our sources, court footage and records, and 2 legal experts. Court records show Derek Chauvin isn't the only former Minneapolis police officer now charged in Floyd's death. Tu Tao, Thomas Lane, and J. Alexander King each face 2 charges, aiding and abetting second-degree murder and aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter. The state is trying to add a third-degree murder charge as well. There's a hearing scheduled next month. Video shows Tao monitoring the crowd of onlookers while Lane and King helped Chauvin pin Floyd in the prone position, even though prosecutors say they were trained that it was inherently dangerous. The 3 are set to be tried together in August. Initially, they were going to stand trial with Chauvin, but in January, Judge Cahill separated Chauvin's trial, citing COVID safety and a lack of space in the courtroom. How could the result of Chauvin's trial impact theirs?
Legally and practically, I'll give 2 slightly different answers.
That's law professor Rachel Moran.
The state can still go forward and charge people for aiding and abetting, even if Derek Chauvin were acquitted of those exact same charges.
A spokesperson for Minnesota's Attorney General's office confirms if Chauvin is acquitted, the charges against the others do not automatically drop. I asked if the state would still choose to charge them. They wouldn't say.
Practically speaking, I don't know that they would.
The 3 men face the same recommended sentence as Chauvin, 12.5 years in prison for the murder charge and 4 for manslaughter.
The sentencing guidelines in Minnesota don't make any difference between sentencing possibilities for being the principal or for being what we call the accomplice, the person who aids and abets.
Chauvin's attorney made it clear the other officers won't testify in his trial.
I confirmed with each of the attorneys last night that they are not permitting their clients to testify.
They have a 5th Amendment right against self-incrimination.
That's law professor Kimberly Whaley.
And they couldn't be forced to testify by the state.
They can't be forced to testify unless the government were to grant them immunity.
So we can verify 3 other former Minneapolis police officers are now facing charges in George Floyd's death, and they're scheduled to go to trial in August. With your Verify, I'm Gabe Cohen.